I trusted Mark with everything. My darkest secret about the accident when I was 16. We were friends for 15 years. Then one day, my life shattered into pieces. She betrayed my deepest secret and twisted it into something evil. Mark didn't just tell people about my past. He changed the story, made me look like a monster who hurt someone on purpose. He planted fake videos of me confessing to crimes I never committed. He sent altered messages to my clients that made me look crazy and dangerous. Why? Because I almost found out he was stealing money from our clients. My innocent question about some numbers scared him, so he destroyed my entire life to protect himself. I lost everything. My business, my friends, my chance with Elise. Even my own mother believed the lies. Now I'm a digital ghost. I've changed my face, my voice, my entire identity. Mark thinks he won. He's dating Elise and taking my clients. He has no idea I'm watching his every move, planning his complete destruction. I will expose every crime he committed and make him feel what it's like to have your life torn apart by someone you trusted. I built my life on privacy and trust. As a digital privacy consultant, I helped people protect their data, their secrets, their lives from exposure. The irony isn't lost on me now. I was good at my job, respected in the industry, careful about who I let close. Mark Winters had been my friend for 15 years since college. We weathered career changes, relationships, his father's death. I thought I knew him completely. My apartment was my sanctuary, minimalist and clean with views of the city skyline. I kept physical copies of nothing important. Everything digital was encrypted. People called me paranoid. I called it professional thoroughness. The morning everything began to unravel started normally. Coffee, encrypted email checks, news scan for privacy breaches to alert clients about. Mark called early, his voice carrying that familiar mix of confidence and casual humor. Adam, remember that security update I mentioned? There's been another industry breach. We should update your systems today. What's the vulnerability? I asked, already pulling up articles about recent breaches. Nothing published yet. My contact at NetSec gave me advance warning. I can come by your place at lunch? I hesitated, briefly. Even with Mark, my instinct was caution. But 15 years of friendship overrode my professional paranoia. Sure, bring lunch and I'll clear my schedule for an hour. Mark arrived precisely at noon with Thai food and his laptop. We ate first, talking about an upcoming industry conference where Elise Carter would be presenting. Elise was brilliant, beautiful, with a sharp mind for cybersecurity that made our conversations electric. I'd been building courage to ask her out for months. You should just ask her already, Mark said, reading my thoughts, as he often did. The conference dinner would be perfect. Maybe, I said, knowing he was right. Let's get this update done first. I watched Mark work on my system, explaining the patches as he went. Nothing seemed unusual or concerning. He was thorough, professional. I trusted him completely. That evening, I replied to an email from my mother. She asked if I was coming home for the anniversary of Dad's death next month. I said yes, as I always did. Family was the one area where my careful privacy relaxed. They knew everything about me, including the accident. It happened when I was 16, driving home from a party, taking a curve too fast, not drunk, but distracted. The other car came from nowhere. I walked away unharmed, but Sarah Jenkins was paralyzed from the waist down. I was legally cleared. It was technically her failure to yield, but I knew the truth. If I'd been driving properly, I could have avoided her. The guilt never left me. I sent money anonymously for her treatments for years. I researched every new therapy, every experimental procedure that might help her walk again. It was my penance, my secret burden. 2 weeks after Mark's security update, his father died suddenly. Heart attack, no warning. I was there immediately, helping with arrangements, staying at his place, listening as he processed his grief. We stayed up late one night, drinking whiskey, talking about life and loss. Sometimes I think about that accident you had, Mark said suddenly. How different your life would have been without it. I rarely discussed it, But grief and whiskey loosened my guard. I think about it every day. Was she completely paralyzed immediately? Or was it a gradual thing after surgery? His questions were detailed, unusual, but I attributed it to the meandering thoughts of mourning. Immediate. T10 spinal cord injury. Complete paralysis below the waist. I found myself sharing details I rarely spoke aloud. The doctors said if the impact had been 2 inches higher, she might have lost lung function too. Mark asked more questions. About the police report. About witnesses. About my statement. I answered them all, unburdening myself to my oldest friend. The next day, sober and clear-headed, something felt wrong about the conversation. Mark had never shown such interest in the accident before. I pushed the thought away, blaming my perpetual caution and the emotionally raw night. A month later, things began to change. Subtle at first. A client canceling a meeting without explanation. An industry contact not returning messages. Elise sending a brief text canceling our coffee meetup before the conference. The first concrete sign came from my mother's call. Ellen Jenkins came up to me at the grocery store. She asked why you've been posting about Sarah online, saying terrible things. What? I haven't posted anything about Sarah. Alarm bells rang in my head. She showed me some Reddit post where someone claiming to be you said you'd been laughing when they pulled Sarah from the car, that you'd meant to hurt her. Adam, it was horrible. My blood went cold. I hung up and immediately searched for the post. I found it within minutes. An anonymous account detailing my accident but with critical, horrifying alterations. It claimed I'd been secretly stalking Sarah before the accident, that I'd deliberately caused the crash, that I'd confessed to finding her suffering satisfying. It used details only someone close to me would know, but twisted into something monstrous. I called Mark immediately. Someone's posted about my accident online. They know details only a few people know. His shock sounded genuine. That's insane. Send me the link. I'll help you trace it, get it taken down. I sent it, not yet suspecting him. Why would I? He was the person I trusted most in the world. More posts appeared over the next few days. More distortions. Then emails to clients with manipulated conversations showing me as unstable, potentially dangerous. A business contact forwarded me a deepfake video where my voice confessed to deliberately causing the accident. My professional reputation collapsed within weeks. Clients terminated contracts. The industry board I served on asked me to take a leave of absence. Elise stopped responding completely. I implemented monitoring on all my systems, tracing the intrusions back to their source. The evidence pointed to the security update Mark had installed on my computer weeks before his father died. Before I'd revealed the detailed account of my accident over whiskey and grief. I didn't confront him immediately. I needed more proof. I hacked into his cloud storage, a violation of everything I believed professionally but necessary. What I found destroyed me. A folder labeled Adam's Downfall contained everything. Original and edited versions of my communications. Scripts for deepfakes. A timeline for destroying my reputation. But the true revelation was buried deeper. Financial records showing extensive embezzlement from clients, including a joint project where I'd noticed discrepancies I'd planned to investigate. Further, communications with Elise dating back months, where he positioned himself as concerned about my stability while courting her romantically. The betrayal was absolute. My closest friend had used my deepest vulnerability as a weapon, twisted it into something monstrous, all to cover his crimes and steal the woman I cared for. That night, looking at the evidence of my systematic destruction, something broke in me. Something else, harder and colder, took its place. If Mark wanted to destroy Adam Thorne, then Adam Thorne would cease to exist. In his place would rise something else entirely, a digital ghost with only one purpose, to dismantle Mark Winter's piece by methodical piece until he experienced the same total destruction he had so carefully crafted for me. I spent 3 days gathering every piece of evidence before confronting Mark. I documented the trail from his security update to the malware on my system, the timestamps of files in his cloud storage, the progressive destruction of my reputation. I wanted no room for denial when I faced him. I called Mark, keeping my voice level despite the rage burning inside me. "We need to talk in person." "Sure, man. Everything okay?" His concern sounded genuine. That was the thing about Mark. He could lie with perfect sincerity. 15 years of friendship, and I'd never noticed. We met at a quiet cafe where we'd often worked together. I arrived early, chose a corner table, and watched him enter. His smile, his casual wave as he spotted me, all of it looked so normal, like he hadn't methodically destroyed my life. "What's going on?" he asked, sliding into the seat across from me. "You sound stressed." I placed my phone between us, screen up. "I know what you did." His expression showed only confusion. "What are you talking about?" "The Reddit posts about my accident, the deepfakes, the emails to my clients, all of it." I watched his face carefully, looking for the crack in his performance. It never came. Instead, his expression shifted to concern. "Adam, those things are happening to you. That's terrible. Why didn't you tell me sooner? I can help trace whoever's doing this." "I already traced it," I said, sliding my phone toward him. On the screen was a screenshot of his folder labeled Adam's Downfall. For just a fraction of a second, something flickered in his eyes. Then it was gone, replaced by bewilderment. "What is this? Someone's framing me? Adam, you can't seriously think I would do this to you." "The malware on my system traces back to the security update you installed. Your cloud storage contains original and edited versions of my private communications. You've been systematically destroying me while pretending to be concerned." My voice remained calm, factual. Mark's performance was flawless. He looked hurt, confused, then increasingly worried for me. "Adam, none of that is true. I don't know what you found, but it's not what you think. Maybe whoever is targeting you is trying to drive a wedge between us? Think about it. Why would I ever hurt you like this? To cover up your embezzlement from our joint clients, to eliminate me as a threat when I noticed financial discrepancies, to clear your path to Elise." I laid out his motives clinically. His eyes widened, a perfect simulation of shock. "Financial discrepancies, Elise? Adam, I think whatever's happening to you is making you paranoid. Let me help you figure out who's really behind this." I realized then that Mark would never admit what he'd done. Not here. Not ever. His denial was another weapon against me, designed to make me question my own evidence, my own sanity. "I'm going to the ethics board with evidence of your financial fraud," I said, standing up. "I'm going to every client whose intellectual property you've stolen." For the first time, real emotion showed on Mark's face. Fear. "Adam, you're not well. Think about what you're saying. After everything we've been through, how can you believe I'd hurt you like this? Let me help you." Those last 3 words, "let me help you," triggered something in me. The same words he'd used before the security update that planted his monitoring tools on my system. The same words he'd used after I discovered the Reddit posts, always offering help that was actually harm. I walked away without another word. Mark called after me, his voice a perfect blend of concern and confusion that would make anyone witnessing our exchange believe I was the unstable one. As I drove home, my phone buzzed repeatedly with messages from Mark, each more concerned than the last. He was building a record, I realized, evidence of his attempts to help his increasingly paranoid friend, another layer of his protection against what I might reveal. When I arrived at my apartment, Elise was waiting outside. Her presence shocked me. She hadn't responded to any communication in weeks. "What are you doing here?" I asked, keeping my distance. She looked uncomfortable, nervous. "Mark called me. He's worried about you, Adam. He said you're accusing him of some conspiracy." Of course he called her. He was moving quickly to contain the threat I posed. "Did he tell you about the Reddit posts? The deepfakes?" "He said someone's been targeting you online and now you think it's him." Her expression was guarded. "He's your oldest friend, Adam. He's been trying to help you through this." "Ask him to show you his cloud storage," I said, Ask him about the folder labeled Adam's Downfall. Ask him about the embezzlement from Simtech and Frontier Data. Something flickered in her eyes. Doubt. I should go. I just wanted to make sure you're okay. I'm not okay, Elise. My life is being systematically destroyed by someone I trusted completely, and he's using that destruction to get closer to you. She stepped back. That's not true. Mark and I have been friends for months. He's been worried about you, that's all. Friends? For months? The confirmation of their relationship predating my downfall hit harder than I expected. How many months exactly? She hesitated. I should go. Please get some help, Adam. As she walked away, I knew Mark had already shaped her perception of me. Anything I said would only reinforce the narrative he'd created of my paranoia, my instability. Inside my apartment, I found evidence of entry. Nothing obvious, Mark was too skilled for that. But the position of items on my desk had shifted slightly. He'd been here, searching for what I might have discovered. The violation cemented my resolve. I spent the night downloading all evidence to secure external drives, then methodically erasing my digital footprint. I transferred funds to accounts Mark couldn't trace, packed only essentials, and prepared to disappear. My mother called just before midnight. Adam, I'm worried about you, Mark called. He said you're having some kind of breakdown. He was cutting off all my support systems, isolating me completely. Mom, I can't explain everything now, but I need you to trust me. Mark isn't who you think he is. He isn't who I thought he was either. He said you might say that. He's arranging for you to see someone, a doctor who specializes in paranoid episodes. The comprehensiveness of his response told me everything. Mark wasn't just defending against my accusations. He was preparing to have me discredited entirely, perhaps even institutionalized if I threatened his carefully constructed life. I have to go away for a while, I told her. I'll contact you when I can. Please don't believe everything you hear about me. The confusion and fear in her voice broke something inside me. Mark had taken even this from me. My relationship with my family, the last place where I could be fully known and accepted. Before dawn, I left my apartment for the last time. As I drove away, I saw Mark's car parked down the street. He was watching, waiting to see what I would do next. He thought he knew me completely, could predict my every move. That was his first mistake. The Adam Thorne he knew died that night. What remained was something colder, more calculating, singularly focused on one goal, making Mark Winters experience the same systematic destruction he had engineered for me. I drove to a storage facility where I'd prepared for contingencies long before any of this happened. Inside a climate-controlled unit rented under a corporation 3 layers removed from my name, I had cash, burner phones, and the tools I would need to begin my transformation. Adam Thorne, digital privacy consultant, trusting friend, would cease to exist. In his place would emerge someone capable of infiltrating Mark's life so completely that he would never see his destruction coming until it was too late to stop it. My disappearance was methodical and complete. I abandoned the storage unit after gathering supplies, knowing Mark might eventually trace it to me. I drove to another city, paid cash for a motel room under a false name, and began planning my transformation. First, I needed to understand what narrative Mark was creating around my absence. Using a burner laptop and public Wi-Fi, I created anonymous accounts to monitor news and industry sites. It didn't take long to find what I was looking for. An industry blog posted about my sudden breakdown and disappearance, with quotes from sources close to the situation. Mark expressed deep concern about my increasingly paranoid behavior, and mentioned how I had made disturbing accusations against longtime friends before vanishing. He positioned himself as the worried friend who had tried everything to get Adam help before he disappeared. The story spread quickly through professional circles. Mark gave an interview to a cybersecurity podcast describing how he had watched a brilliant mind unravel and was desperately hoping Adam would seek treatment. He mentioned taking over my clients temporarily to ensure their needs were met during my health crisis. It was a masterful narrative, If I reappeared and accused him of anything, it would only confirm the story he'd established of my paranoia. He had effectively neutralized any threat I might pose to his reputation, while simultaneously absorbing my client base and positioning himself as compassionate and professional. The most revealing piece came 3 weeks after my disappearance. An industry newsletter announced Mark and Elise were dating, with a photo of them at a charity gala. The article mentioned how they had found comfort in each other while dealing with the difficult situation involving their mutual friend. I felt nothing seeing them together. Whatever emotional response might have existed had been burned away, replaced by cold, focused purpose. Their relationship wasn't a betrayal anymore. It was simply another component to analyze in my planning. From my motel room, I began my systematic transformation. I changed my appearance first, losing weight through strict calorie restriction, dyeing my hair, growing a beard. I studied voice modulation techniques and practiced speaking in a slightly different register until it became natural. I created the foundation for my new identity. Nathan Reed, a security specialist who had spent years working overseas with private clients, now establishing a presence in the domestic market. I constructed a detailed background with just enough verifiable elements to withstand casual scrutiny, but vague enough in key areas to avoid deep investigation. The physical transformation took months. I moved frequently, using cash, leaving no digital trail. I studied Mark's company remotely, identifying vulnerabilities in their security systems, mapping his client relationships, and understanding the precise architecture of the business he had built, partly on the ruins of mine. What I discovered during this surveillance was far worse than I had initially realized. Mark's financial fraud extended beyond the embezzlement I had detected. He had been systematically stealing intellectual property from clients, repackaging it, and selling it to others. He maintained a complex blackmail operation targeting industry figures who might threaten his position. The betrayal that destroyed my life wasn't personal. It was simply his standard approach to eliminating threats. Most significantly, I found evidence that Mark had started targeting Elise long before my downfall began. Their chance meetings at industry events had been carefully orchestrated. He had researched her preferences, engineered situations to appear coincidentally aligned with her interests, and strategically positioned himself as everything she would find appealing. 6 months into my transformation, I made my first test of Mark's systems. Using a specialized exploit, I gained access to a non-critical server at his company. I didn't take anything or make changes. I simply verified that my understanding of his security architecture was accurate and that I could move within his systems undetected. During this period, I also tracked the impact of my disappearance on Sarah Jenkins, the woman from my accident. Mark had contacted her as part of his narrative construction, and she had publicly supported the story that I had always been unstable and potentially dangerous. I felt no anger toward her. She was another victim of Mark's manipulation. I anonymously directed information about new experimental treatments for spinal cord injuries to Sarah's medical team. I established a foundation 3 layers removed from any connection to me that would eventually fund her access to these treatments. My guilt over the accident remained, but my responsibility to her existed independently from my plans for Mark. 9 months after my disappearance, Nathan Reed was ready to emerge. I had constructed a digital footprint suggesting years of international work, created through carefully backdated websites, strategic social media presence, and forum contributions that established expertise without drawing attention. I rented an apartment in the same city where Mark's company operated. I set up a small consulting firm specializing in protecting high-profile individuals from digital manipulation and character assassination, precisely the service I wish had existed. When Mark began destroying my life, my first clients were deliberately low-profile but strategically connected to Mark's industry. I built my reputation methodically, ensuring my work was exceptional enough to create word-of-mouth recommendations, but not so revolutionary that it would draw undue attention. I watched from a distance as Mark's success grew. He had fully absorbed my former client base and expanded beyond it. He and Elise were now a power couple in the industry, frequently featured in professional publications. To anyone observing, he appeared to have everything: Professional success, a beautiful, intelligent partner, industry respect. Only I could see the cracks in his digital empire, the vulnerabilities I had spent months mapping. Only I knew the precise pressure points that would cause his carefully constructed life to collapse. 1 year after Adam Thorne disappeared, I initiated the first real incursion into Mark's systems. I planted dormant programs designed to remain completely inactive until triggered. These were not crude attacks, but subtle architectural changes that would allow me precise control when the time came. I gained access to Mark's personal cloud storage, confirming that he still maintained the Adam's Downfall folder, now archived but not deleted. He had added a new section documenting my disappearance and the subsequent narrative he had constructed. The level of detail was chilling. Every contingency planned for, every potential threat to his story anticipated and neutralized. Mark believed he had won completely. Adam Thorne was gone, professionally discredited, personally destroyed. There was no threat on his horizon, no reason to maintain vigilance against a ghost. That absolute confidence would be his undoing. I had become something he couldn't anticipate because he believed he had eliminated all opposition. He was building higher and higher on a foundation I was systematically preparing to destroy. As Nathan Reed gained credibility in the industry, I positioned myself to eventually intersect with Mark's professional circle. Not directly, not yet, but through carefully cultivated relationships with people adjacent to his network. Each connection brought me one step closer to the complete infiltration of his world. The process was painfully slow, requiring absolute patience and precision. But I had nothing but time. Mark had taken everything else from me, including any desire for a life beyond this singular purpose. I existed now only to ensure he experienced the same methodical destruction he had engineered for me. My monitoring systems alerted me when Mark's company announced they would be bidding for a major government cybersecurity contract. This would be the perfect stage for the next phase of my plan, the first real pressure point that would begin the systematic collapse of everything he had built. The government contract represented a significant expansion for Mark's company, projected to double their valuation if secured. I studied the request for proposals thoroughly, identifying each security requirement and compliance standard they would need to meet. Then I examined Mark's existing systems against these benchmarks, mapping every vulnerability and shortcoming. Instead of attacking directly, I approached a mid-level manager at one of Mark's smaller clients, Clearview Analytics. As Nathan Reed, security consultant, I offered a complimentary security assessment, suggesting their data might be at risk due to industry-standard vulnerabilities. My real purpose was establishing a legitimate access point adjacent to Mark's network. The assessment revealed exactly what I expected. Clearview's proprietary algorithm had significant similarities to another client's intellectual property that Mark had stolen. I documented the evidence but didn't mention it to Clearview. Instead, I secured them as a client, implementing security upgrades that gave me a permanent, legitimate presence near Mark's digital ecosystem. From this vantage point, I implemented the first minor disruption in Mark's systems. Nothing catastrophic, just an inexplicable delay in client communications that required his team to send manual apologies. When they investigated, they found no evidence of external interference, attributing the issue to a server misconfiguration. Mark's response was predictable. He increased security measures, implementing new protocols that his team assured him would prevent similar issues. What they didn't know was that their security upgrade included components I had already compromised, giving me deeper access to their operations. My next move was more targeted. I ensured that Quantum Shield, one of Mark's prestigious clients, received information that elements of their proprietary encryption protocol had appeared in a project Mark had developed for a different client. The information came through channels that couldn't be traced back to me, appearing to be an accidental discovery by Quantum Shield's internal audit team. Mark handled the situation skillfully, convincing Quantum Shield that the similarities were coincidental, a result of industry-standard approaches rather than intellectual property theft. He retained the client, But the incident required significant resources to manage and planted the first seed of doubt about his company's practices. Meanwhile, Nathan Reed's reputation continued to grow. I published articles on digital security that demonstrated expertise without revealing my full capabilities. I accepted speaking engagements at smaller industry events, carefully constructing a professional identity that would eventually intersect with Mark's circle without raising suspicion. 18 months after my disappearance, I received the opportunity I had been waiting for. A prominent industry figure who had become a client of my security firm recommended me for a panel discussion at the annual cybersecurity conference, where Mark was scheduled to be a keynote speaker. The topic: digital manipulation and character. Assassination. Emerging threats in the information age. The irony was perfect. I accepted immediately, knowing this would place me in the same professional space as Mark for the first time since my transformation. I prepared meticulously, ensuring my appearance and mannerisms as Nathan Reed showed no trace of Adam Thorne. The conference was held at a luxury hotel downtown. I arrived early, observing Mark from a distance as he networked confidently, Elise at his side. They looked perfect together, both attractive and professionally successful. Only I knew their relationship was built on the destruction of someone they had both claimed to care about. My panel preceded Mark's keynote. I spoke authoritatively about the techniques used to destroy reputations through digital means, describing methods identical to those Mark had used against me without ever hinting at personal experience. The audience was engaged, including several of Mark's current clients who took particular interest in my description of how intellectual property could be stolen through seemingly benign security assessments. After the panel, one of Mark's major clients approached me directly, impressed by my presentation. He mentioned concerns about their proprietary technology and asked if I would be available for a consultation. I accepted politely, knowing this would place Nathan Reed on Mark's radar in a way that would appear completely legitimate. The interaction happened exactly as I had anticipated. The client introduced me to Mark during the networking reception, mentioning his interest in my services. Mark extended his hand with his characteristic confident smile. "Nathan Reed, your reputation precedes you. That was an excellent panel discussion." I shook his hand firmly, looking directly into the eyes of the man who had methodically destroyed my life. There was no recognition, no hint of suspicion. Why would there be? Adam Thorne was long gone, and Nathan Reed was a completely different person, from appearance to speech patterns to professional background. "Coming from you, that's quite a compliment," I replied smoothly. "Your work on predictive security protocols has been groundbreaking." We engaged in professional small talk, discussing industry trends and mutual connections. I was careful to demonstrate expertise without challenging his authority in the field. I wanted to register as a potential resource, not a competitor. Elise joined us midway through the conversation. Seeing her up close for the first time since my transformation triggered no emotional response. She was simply another element in the equation now, a variable to account for in my calculations. "Nathan is doing fascinating work in counter-manipulation strategies," Mark told her, making the introduction. She shook my hand with professional warmth. "That's becoming increasingly important. We've had personal experience with how devastating targeted digital attacks can be." "Your friend who disappeared," I said, demonstrating knowledge of a publicly known situation. "I read about that case. Tragic." Mark's expression showed perfectly calibrated concern. "Adam was brilliant. Whatever happened to him, I hope he got the help he needed." The absolute conviction in his performance was remarkable. Standing face to face with the man whose life he had destroyed, he showed no hint of his true nature. It confirmed everything I had planned for, this capacity for complete compartmentalization. "Sometimes the people closest to us are hiding the most," I said, the only indulgence I allowed myself in the conversation. Mark nodded solemnly, missing the double meaning entirely. "That's what makes these situations so difficult. You think you know someone completely." The exchange was brief, but accomplished everything I needed. Nathan Reed was now on Mark's radar as a respected professional in adjacent space, not a threat, but a potentially useful connection. Over the next 2 months, I accelerated the implementation of my plan. The dormant programs I had planted in Mark's systems began creating small, explicable disruptions. Client emails occasionally failed to send. Calendar invitations disappeared. Financial reports showed minor discrepancies that required time-consuming reconciliation. None of these issues were catastrophic individually. They appeared to be the normal technical glitches that any company might experience. Mark's team investigated each incident, finding no evidence of external interference, implementing fixes that seemed to resolve the immediate problems, while actually giving me greater access to their systems. As these disruptions accumulated, I ensured certain clients received information that caused them to question specific aspects of Mark's work. A misattributed line of code here, a striking similarity in proprietary algorithms there, all appearing to be discovered accidentally by the clients themselves. Mark's company began experiencing the first significant consequences of my actions when Quantum Shield, the client who had previously raised concerns about intellectual property, conducted a deeper audit and terminated their relationship. The official reason cited was incompatible security protocols, but the industry rumor mill suggested more serious concerns about proprietary technology protection. Mark successfully contained the situation, explaining to other clients that Quantum Shield had unreasonable expectations and reassuring them of his company's commitment to intellectual property protection. He retained most of his client base, but the incident required significant resources to manage and created the first visible crack in his carefully maintained reputation. The balance of power had begun to shift, imperceptibly to everyone except me. Mark still appeared successful and in control, but he was now spending increasing amounts of time managing issues I had orchestrated, responding to doubts I had planted, repairing systems I had subtly compromised. I watched his stress manifest in small ways, visible only to someone studying him as carefully as I was. The slight tightening around his eyes during client calls, the increased intensity of his workouts at his exclusive gym, the late nights at the office that Elise complained about on her private social media. My plan was working exactly as designed. The pressure was building gradually, systematically, in ways Mark couldn't trace or effectively combat. The foundation of his success was developing stress fractures that would eventually lead to catastrophic failure. And, through it all, Nathan Reed's reputation continued to grow as a trusted expert in precisely the kind of digital manipulation Mark was beginning to experience. The stage was set for the next phase of my plan, the acceleration that would begin the visible dismantling of everything Mark had built. The annual Industry Awards ceremony was approaching, and Mark had been nominated for Entrepreneur of the Year. This prestigious recognition would normally cement his position at the top of the industry hierarchy. I ensured his nomination proceeded, smoothly, subtly influencing the selection committee through legitimate channels. The award would become the perfect stage for the next phase of my plan. 2 months before the ceremony, I escalated my systematic campaign. I arranged for financial auditors to receive anonymous but verifiable information about discrepancies in Mark's company finances. The documentation was carefully curated, revealing enough to trigger a routine investigation without exposing the full extent of his fraud. The audit would be a slow burn, building pressure while Mark focused on his upcoming award. Mark's first real crisis came when Axiom Technologies, one of his largest clients, discovered their proprietary machine learning algorithm implemented in a project Mark had developed for a competitor. I had ensured this discovery appeared to come from Axiom's internal security team, impossible to trace back to external interference. Mark contained the situation through a combination of technical explanations, legal maneuvering, and personal charm, but retaining Axiom required him to make significant contractual concessions. The financial impact was substantial, and industry whispers about potential intellectual property issues began circulating. I watched through my monitoring systems as Mark became increasingly agitated. He implemented new security protocols, conducted internal investigations, and held emergency meetings with his leadership team. None of these measures identified the true source of his problems because they were looking for traditional attacks rather than the architectural subversion I had implemented. Elise, with her cybersecurity background, began noticing patterns that others missed. I observed their private conversations where she questioned whether the accumulating issues might be connected. Mark dismissed her concerns initially, attributing them to industry competition and bad luck, but her persistence eventually led him to launch a more comprehensive security audit. I had anticipated this response and prepared accordingly. The audit found nothing because my infiltration existed in the blind spots of their security paradigm. The programs I had planted mimicked normal system functions so perfectly that they were indistinguishable from legitimate operations to even the most sophisticated analysis. The stress began affecting Mark's relationship with Elise. My monitoring showed increasing tension between them, arguments about his late nights at the IDOR office, his growing paranoia about competitors, his obsessive focus on identifying the source of his company's problems. I accelerated the pressure by ensuring evidence of Mark's blackmail operations reached several of his targets. I didn't expose him publicly, which would have alerted him to the orchestrated nature of his problems. Instead, I gave his victims just enough information to quietly distance themselves from him, without creating a visible scandal. Each of these strategic moves was designed to increase Mark's isolation, forcing him to expend more resources managing each new crisis, leaving him less capacity to identify the pattern of his systematic dismantling. 1 month before the awards ceremony, I engineered the most significant blow yet. I arranged for GlobalSec, Mark's most prestigious client and a cornerstone of his company's reputation, to discover that their classified security protocols had been compromised through their partnership with Mark's firm. The discovery created immediate crisis. GlobalSec terminated their contract, implementing emergency security measures to contain potential damage. They didn't publicly blame Mark's company, preferring to handle the situation discreetly, but the sudden termination of such a significant contract couldn't be hidden from industry observers. Mark called an emergency board meeting. I monitored the proceedings through the access I had established in their systems. For the first time, his leadership team openly questioned his management decisions. The financial impact of losing GlobalSec was severe, and the ongoing audit had discovered additional concerning patterns requiring explanation. Mark maintained control of the situation through sheer force of personality and detailed technical explanations that obscured the extent of the problems. He convinced the board that the company was facing a coordinated attack from competitors, positioning himself as the only person with the expertise to protect their interests. The board reluctantly accepted his explanation, but with conditions. They implemented new oversight procedures, required additional financial reporting, and appointed an independent security consultant to assess their vulnerabilities. Mark recommended Nathan Reed for this role, having encountered me at the cybersecurity conference and being impressed by my expertise. This was the opening I had been waiting for. As Nathan Reed, I was invited into the heart of Mark's operation with his full cooperation. I conducted a comprehensive security assessment, identifying legitimate vulnerabilities while carefully concealing my own infiltration. My report provided valuable security improvements while subtly enhancing my existing access to their systems. During this process, I worked directly with Elise, who served as the technical liaison for the security audit. Our professional interactions revealed her growing doubts about Mark's explanations. Her cybersecurity expertise made her increasingly convinced that the pattern of issues suggested something more systematic than random attacks or bad luck. I carefully cultivated her trust, demonstrating expertise without revealing my true intentions. When she cautiously voiced concerns about Mark's technical decisions, I responded with measured professional assessments that validated her doubts without pushing her toward specific conclusions. The dynamic between them deteriorated further as the awards ceremony approached. My monitoring systems captured a heated argument where Elise confronted Mark about accessing her private accounts. He denied it initially, then justified it as protecting both of them from whoever was targeting his company. Her cybersecurity background made this violation particularly significant to her, and the trust between them fractured visibly. 2 weeks before the ceremony, Mark received confirmation that the Entrepreneur of the Year award was his. The public announcement generated significant positive press, temporarily overshadowing the growing problems within his company. He leveraged this recognition to reassure clients and investors, presenting the award as validation of his leadership despite recent challenges. I allowed this narrative to stand temporarily. The higher his public profile rose, the more devastating his fall would be. The award ceremony would gather every significant player in the industry, creating the perfect audience for the final phase of my plan. In the days leading up to the event, I meticulously prepared the components of Mark's complete exposure. I compiled irrefutable evidence of his intellectual property theft, financial fraud, and blackmail operations. I organized the documentation chronologically, creating a comprehensive narrative of systematic criminal behavior spanning years. Most significantly, I uncovered the evidence connecting his orchestrated destruction of Adam Thorne directly to his wider criminal activities. The timeline clearly showed how he had methodically eliminated me when my innocent questions about financial discrepancies threatened to expose his entire operation. The night before the ceremony, I activated the final phase of my infiltration. Every digital system connected to Mark's operation was now under my complete control, though this control remained dormant, invisible to detection until I chose to reveal it. I watched through security cameras as Mark prepared his acceptance speech, practicing in his office mirror with the confident smile that had once seemed so genuine to me. He had no idea that in less than 24 hours, that smile would be permanently erased, replaced by the expression of a man watching his carefully constructed life collapse completely around him. Elise called him as he was leaving the office. Their conversation was tense, focused on logistics for the ceremony rather than celebration. The distance between them was palpable, her tone professional rather than intimate. She ended the call by saying she would meet him at the venue rather than arriving together as originally planned. I monitored Mark's movements as he returned to his luxury apartment, ordered dinner, reviewed his speech once more, and finally went to bed. He slept soundly. A man who believed tomorrow would be the crowning achievement of his career rather than the beginning of its complete destruction. As the city slept, I made my final preparations for the ceremony. Everything was in place, every system tested, every contingency planned for. After 18 months of painstaking work, the moment of Mark's reckoning had arrived. Tomorrow, he would experience the same systematic destruction he had engineered for me, played out on the very public stage he had created for his triumph. The Grand Meridian Hotel ballroom glittered with the industry elite, technologists, and executives in formal attire mingling over champagne. I arrived early as Nathan Reed, security consultant, my appearance impeccable in a tailored suit that bore no resemblance to anything Adam Thorne would have worn. I positioned myself strategically near the technical control area, monitoring the preparations while maintaining a professional demeanor. Mark arrived an hour before the ceremony, commanding attention immediately in a custom tuxedo, his confident smile fixed perfectly in place. He moved through the crowd with practiced ease, accepting congratulations, shaking hands, making connections. From a distance, I observed how people responded to him, drawn to his charisma and success, unaware of the predator beneath the polished exterior. Elise arrived separately 30 minutes later, elegant in a deep blue gown that complemented her professional reputation. She joined Mark with a practiced smile, their public persona as the industry power couple intact despite the private fractures I had been monitoring. They moved through the room together, but the subtle distance between them was visible to anyone watching closely. The ceremony began with introductory remarks, industry achievements, minor awards. Throughout the preliminary proceedings, I remained in position, monitoring my systems through a discreet earpiece and the tablet I carried as part of my security consultant persona. Everything was functioning perfectly, waiting for my activation. Command. As the time for the Entrepreneur of the Year award approached, I initiated the first phase of my orchestrated exposure. Outside the ballroom, financial authorities were quietly gathering, positioned to enter at the precise moment I had arranged. Law enforcement officials were being briefed on the evidence I had provided through anonymous channels. Arrest warrants prepared based on the documentation of Mark's extensive criminal activities. Inside the ballroom, the industry's digital infrastructure was now completely under my control. The presentation systems, the hotel's digital displays, the personal devices of every attendee, all accessible through the exploits I had spent months developing. The awards host took the stage, building anticipation for the main event. This year's Entrepreneur of the Year has revolutionized how we approach digital security and social media management. Please welcome to the stage Mark Winters. Applause filled the room as Mark confidently approached the podium. He looked out at the audience with the satisfied expression of a man who believed he had won completely, permanently. That expression was about to change forever. "Thank you," he began, his voice strong and assured. "This recognition represents the culmination of years of innovation and dedication by my entire team." As he continued his carefully crafted speech, I sent the activation command to my infiltration system. Across the room, digital displays flickered momentarily, then stabilized, still showing the live feed of Mark at the podium. The change was imperceptible to most observers, but the systems were now under my complete control. Mark reached the portion of his speech where he thanked key mentors and clients. "I want to especially thank GlobalSec for their partnership and trust over the years." At that precise moment, every screen in the ballroom changed simultaneously, displaying a split screen. On one side, Mark continued speaking. On the other, documents appeared showing the evidence of how he had stolen and sold GlobalSec's classified security protocols. A confused murmur spread through the audience. Mark faltered slightly, noticing the changed expressions but unable to see the displays from his position. "Is there a technical problem?" he asked, attempting to maintain his composure. The screens changed again, now showing evidence of his systematic intellectual property theft from multiple clients present in the room. The documentation was irrefutable, showing original code alongside Mark's stolen and repackaged versions, timestamps proving the sequence of theft. The murmur became louder. People turned to their phones and tablets, finding the same evidence, appearing on their personal devices. Mark's expression shifted from confusion to alarm as he realized something significant was happening. "I believe we're experiencing some technical difficulties," he said, looking to the production team for explanation. The doors at the back of the ballroom opened and financial authorities entered quietly, positioning themselves around the perimeter. Simultaneously, the screens changed again, now displaying evidence of Mark's financial fraud, the embezzlement, schemes he had constructed over years, the money trails leading to offshore accounts. Mark spotted the authorities and visibly paled. His eyes darted around the room, seeking an explanation, an escape, finding neither. The audience was now in open disorder, executives confronting each other, clients looking at the evidence in horror, connections being made between separate incidents that now formed a clear pattern of systematic criminal behavior. "If I could have everyone's attention," he tried again, his voice losing its confident edge. "There seems to be some kind of attack happening." The screens shifted one final time, now showing the folder labeled Adam Thorne's Downfall. The audience fell silent as they watched the methodical destruction of a man's life unfold before them. The deliberate manipulation of truth, the fabricated evidence, all traced directly back to Mark's systems. The transition was perfect, connecting the pattern of criminal behavior they had just witnessed to the personal destruction of a former industry colleague. Many of them remembered. The narrative was clear and undeniable. The same methods used to steal from clients employed to destroy someone who threatened to expose the truth. Mark stood frozen at the podium, watching as his carefully constructed life collapsed completely around him. His phone began buzzing continuously with notifications as banks froze his accounts, clients terminated contracts, and board members initiated emergency protocols, all triggered by the evidence now circulating throughout the industry's digital ecosystem. I moved through the stunned crowd toward Elise, who stood separated from Mark, her cybersecurity background allowing her to grasp the full implications of what she was seeing faster than most. Her expression showed horror mingled with recognition, as connections formed between the inexplicable issues she had noticed and the comprehensive criminal enterprise now exposed. "Ms. Carter," I said, approaching her professionally as Nathan Reed. "You might want to come with me. Your accounts have been compromised as well, though not by the same attack affecting the ceremony." She looked at me with confusion, still processing. the unfolding catastrophe. What do you mean? Mr. Winters has been monitoring your private communications. I discovered it during my security audit but wasn't authorized to inform you directly. Given current circumstances, that constraint no longer applies. Her expression hardened as this final betrayal registered. On stage, Mark was being approached by authorities. His speech forgotten, his award meaningless in the face of the criminal charges now being read to him. I guided Elise away from the chaos, leading her to a quiet anteroom off the main ballroom. Once private, I handed her a secure tablet containing documentation of how Mark had manipulated her from the beginning, using her to enhance his credibility while systematically destroying Adam Thorne. This includes everything, I said. His surveillance of your accounts, his orchestrated chance meetings before you began dating, and his use of your relationship to support the narrative about Adam Thorne's instability. She reviewed the evidence with growing horror. I was part of this, she whispered. I believed him completely about Adam. You were manipulated by someone who excelled at manipulation, I said. My firm specializes in helping victims of digital character assassination. If you'd like assistance securing your accounts and protecting your professional reputation from the fallout, I'd be happy to help. She looked up at me, studying my face more carefully. For a moment, I wondered if some trace of Adam Thorne was visible beneath Nathan Reed's carefully constructed exterior. But the moment passed, and she simply nodded, professional instincts taking over despite the personal shock. Thank you. I would appreciate that. I left her reviewing the documentation and returned to observe the completion of Mark's downfall. He was being escorted from the ballroom in handcuffs, his expression a mixture of shock and desperation. The confident smile that had charmed clients and covered crimes for years was gone completely, replaced by the naked fear of a man who suddenly understood he had lost everything. In the days that followed, the full extent of Mark's criminal enterprise became public knowledge. Multiple clients filed lawsuits for intellectual property theft. Financial investigators uncovered embezzlement far exceeding initial estimates. Former targets of his blackmail operations came forward with additional evidence. His company collapsed under the weight of the revelations, the board distancing themselves immediately, clients terminating all contracts. Most significantly for me, the truth about Adam Thorne emerged clearly from the evidence. Industry publications ran stories about how Mark had deliberately destroyed his friend's reputation and life to cover his own crimes. Former clients reached out to express regret for believing the fabricated narrative. The professional rehabilitation of Adam Thorne was complete, though he remained missing, presumed to be living in seclusion after his traumatic experience. I monitored these developments through Nathan Reed's legitimate security firm, which grew rapidly as companies sought protection from exactly the kind of manipulation Mark had employed. Elise became a client, then eventually a partner in the firm, her cybersecurity expertise complementing my specialized knowledge of digital manipulation. 6 months after the ceremony, I received notification that Sarah Jenkins, the woman from my accident, had successfully undergone the experimental treatment funded by my anonymous foundation. Early results showed promising nerve regeneration that might eventually restore partial mobility. This private victory meant more to me than Mark's public destruction. A restoration of something genuine in a life otherwise defined by calculated revenge. I never revealed my true identity to anyone. Nathan Reed became my permanent reality, the person I would be for the remainder of my life. Adam Thorne existed now only in industry articles discussing his vindication and occasional speculative pieces wondering what had become of him. The final confirmation of my complete victory came 1 year after the ceremony. I visited Mark in the Federal Detention Center, where he awaited trial on multiple felony charges. I signed in as Nathan Reed, security consultant, claiming professional interest in his case. He didn't recognize me. How could he? The man he had destroyed no longer existed in any recognizable form. We spoke for 20 minutes about cybersecurity, his case, his spectacular fall. Throughout our conversation, I searched for any hint of remorse, any recognition of the lives he had damaged, finding only self-pity and blame directed outward. As I left, he called after me. They set me up. Someone orchestrated all of it. Don't you see the pattern? I turned back, meeting his eyes one final time. "Sometimes the people closest to us are hiding the most," I said, echoing the words I had spoken during our first meeting as Nathan Reed. A flicker of something crossed his face. Not recognition, but perhaps the first hint of understanding that his destruction had been as methodical and purposeful as the destruction he had engineered for others. I walked away without another word, leaving him alone with that realization, confined in a prison both physical and digital of his own making, exactly as I had planned from the moment I discovered his betrayal. The circle was complete, the accounts, balanced with cold precision, justice served in the currency of complete and systematic destruction.